You're watching India Today Global. News that's coming in is that the US congressional delegation that is in India has just called on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This day after they had gone to Dharamshala, engaged with the Tibetan government in exile, met with the Dalai Lama, spoke about the need for China to engage the Tibetans here living in India, to talk about an autonomous Tibet and to engage and have a restart of the dialogue between Tibetans, the Tibet government in exile, and the Chinese administration to find a way forward. While all this might sound really good, it's coming from America. So yes, it has rankled China. Beijing has reacted to this entire trip of a top-level US congressional delegation that is in India. They also met with External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, and while there is a lot when it comes to bilateral ties between India and the United States of America, and therefore every time a US delegation is in India for various purposes, they do end up meeting with the ministers and if there is an opportunity, call on the Prime Minister. This is one of the highest level of delegations that we've seen from the United States of America, but they came with a specific agenda, and that agenda has really rattled Beijing. A strong reaction that came from Beijing was from not just the foreign ministry there, where the foreign ministry has criticized the US for its connections with the 14th Dalai Lama ahead of a meeting, and asked the foreign ministry spokesperson, and I quote over here, Lin Jian described the Dalai Lama as a political exile who engages in anti-China separatist activities under the guise of religion. The fact that India hosts the Dalai Lama and has been hosting the Dalai Lama since 1959, and the fact that there is a Tibetan government in exile here in India has been a matter of contention and a problem between India and China. But how is China viewing it? How are the Tibetans looking at a call for an autonomous Tibet, a call for restart of dialogue between China and the Tibetans? The Tibetan government in exile is something we'll have to see. To discuss a little more on this, I'm being joined, this is an exclusive conversation, I'm being joined by Mr. Lobsang Sangay. He is the former president of the CTA, that's the Tibetan government in exile, and teaches law at Harvard. Thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Global. Mr. Sangay, how do you look at this? The fact that there is a US delegation in India, they have engaged with the government in exile, they met with the Dalai Lama, and now they're meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Is that something that will really rattle Beijing?
I think the US delegation led by leader Nancy Pelosi and chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee, Michael McCall, and the bipartisan delegation members sends a clear message to Beijing that we are here to be with His Holiness Dalai Lama. Next year is His Holiness 90th birthday, but as per Tibetan calendar, this year also is his 90th birthday. So we're here to wish him his traditional the lunar calendar's 90th birthday, but more importantly, to show solidarity with Tibetan people and send a message to Beijing that yes, Tibet is under occupation, Tibetans are repressed, but America has not forgotten, and we will travel all the way, cross ocean, and fly up to a beautiful town of Dharamsala to be with him. So this is a very strong message to Beijing. The fact that they went to Dharamsala first, met with His Holiness Dalai Lama, and came down to Delhi, met with Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji and Foreign Minister Jaishankar ji in that photo, if I'm not wrong. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval ji seems to be there as well. If that's the case, this is also, delegation has come to make a friendly reminder to India, and now Indian government has come out fully if not in full endorsement, at least an indication that we are, with the US delegation as far as Tibet is concerned.
That's a very important point you make, Dr. Sangay. You're saying that the fact that they're here and that the meetings took place in Dharamshala, and now they're meeting with the Prime Minister, and they met with External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar Will Beijing look at it as endorsement? Will Beijing look at it as connected? Because normally in diplomacy we seek dehyphenation, that you do what you want to, you're here as guests, but let's not hyphenate. Is this hyphenation? Is this putting the two together, and Beijing will consider this provocation?
Beijing is good at making connections where there are no connections at all, right? But this time there is a connection, in the sense they went to Dharamsala first, paid respect to him, got his blessing, and came down to Delhi. Now Delhi is saying, yes, you are welcome also to the government, and then we will meet with you. And then, not just meet with you, there are many ways to do these things, but to have a photograph and video and publish it and release it, with smiles on their faces, that's a very, a strong message to Beijing that India will have our own autonomous foreign policy. And our policy is that we respect what the US delegation has come here to do. That is wish His Holiness Dalai Lama and meet leaders of the Tibetan government exile.
Well, the larger picture over here, you have engaged with the US administration yourself. Now, there is a Tibet policy that both sides are looking at, whether it's the Tibetan side or, for that matter, the US administration. It has been passed by the Senate and the House. How do you see that really translate into an acceptance? Because anything that US does, is that not counterproductive? You could have looked at engaging China directly. The fact that if you go through the DC route, does that not create more problems for Dharamshala?
No, I think what US is trying to do is reiterate and reframe their policies towards Tibet and Tibetan people. For example, I have met Nancy Pelosi when she was Speaker of the House many times. Yes, I know some of the congressmen, including my friend Jim McGovern, is in the delegation. And this time what they're saying is, yes, in 2020, if you remember, Geeta, we passed the Tibetan Policy and Support Act, yes, which has everything that we wanted. But the history part was not clarified. Now, in this version, historically, what the bill says, present bill says, historically Tibet was an independent country, and Tibetans, based on international law, should consider right of self-determination. This is very strong, right? And China should have dialogue with the, His Holiness Dalai Lama or his envoys. So this is a very, US always supported dialogue, but they said there should be dialogue to solve the issue of Tibet. But this time there's a historical reiteration that Tibet was an Azad nation, deserves self-determination. Now you should talk, right? And if you don't talk, if you don't resolve, America's stand on historical, status of Tibet is made very clear. So this is very, I would say, justified and truthful stand of the US government.
But the moment you say self-determination, is that not counterproductive? Again, at the end of the day, Dr. Sangay, you have to engage China. The moment you talk about self-determination, and that is what the US is doing, I will come to the next question on US, but just on self-determination, is that not counterproductive?
No, it's not counterproductive. What they're saying is,
from the China prism, look at it from the China prism. Is it not counterproductive if you're trying to engage a Xi Jinping's China and say self-determination?
Now, if you look at it from Beijing point of view, you can say that. But His Holiness Dalai Lama, there is no one who is peaceful, compassionate, and kind and reasonable person than His Holiness Dalai Lama. He has always been saying, let history be history. Tibet was independent, but I'm willing to compromise. Just give us genuine autonomy within the framework of the Chinese constitution, and I'll send delegation, we'll solve the issue of Tibet. But Chinese government has always said, no, you're separatists. You actually want more than what you're seeking. His Holiness has reiterated middle way as his mantra. I want middle way. I want a compromise solution, right? But Beijing is saying, no, your split is, Dalai clique. That's why the spokesperson of China's foreign ministry is condemning this visit as well. But why it's not counterproductive is, what US is saying is historically Tibet was independent. Tibetans deserve right to self-determination. But if Beijing is willing, on good faith, you can talk to His Holiness Dalai Lama and his envoys and you know, address what His Holiness is seeking or Tibetan people is seeking. That is genuine autonomy to the Tibetan people.
But again, now I'll come back to the US question. It is very interesting that, we're seeing Tibet back on the global agenda. We're looking at the United States of America raise the issue of Tibet. And it is important. It is really important. But Dr. Sangay, playing devil's advocate over here, does it help Tibet or the people of Tibet to have the US fight for your cause when it is convenient for them? Because this issue is not raised every time they're engaging China, and they are indeed engaging China. It is in a silo that they work on Tibet. So how does it help Tibet's cause? If you're looking at your own interests and interests of the Tibetan people, should you also not then approach it choosing the middle path, saying we will neither seek support from this side or that side, certainly not from a side that China does not consider a friend or an ally? How does it really help to have America, or is America then using the Tibet cause to counter China? Is this in America's interest, or is this in Tibet's interest?
No, I think that America is not using Tibet. Actually, I've been to Washington D.C. 30 or 40 times when I was Sichuan, telling them this is the issue of Tibet. Please raise the issue of Tibet. In the sense, we want to be used to some extent. But what we are saying is,
really, did you say
please
that?
tell Beijing about history and help us support for dialogue. We've been initiating dialogue for 30 years, right? His Holiness genuinely offered his hand. Olive branch has been extended. He has extended his hand. Now, to clap, you need two hands. So what America is saying is we are strengthening Tibetan hand, and by telling Beijing, now why don't you extend your hand and have dialogue? US is not saying how the issues should be addressed and what Tibetans should be given. But what US is saying is that listen to Dalai Lama and talk to him and solve the issue amicably between you two. That's a very fair stand.
But if you ask me, the more US says it, the more Beijing will not. I mean, if you're actually looking at countries that Beijing might listen to or might consider friends, should you not look at that route? Because in a certain way, this is a strategic move by America. This is a strategic move coming at a time when the relationship between China and America is at its lowest.
No, actually, I would not agree. Point is because there are 1,000 companies, American companies, still doing business in China.
That's true.
And then the trade relationship between China and America is also very strong. So China does listen to American people, business people, politicians, what have you, when they want or when they want to, or when their needs are being fulfilled, right? So in that sense, what they're saying is, yes, we have all this business relationship and we have done this appeasement. We have given you all the things you're asking for, and His Holiness Dalai Lama has supported, most favored nation status and the 2008 Olympics. His Holiness has always supported, when even some other countries were opposed to giving this, status to China. So in that sense, they have relationship, they do listen to each other. Now America is saying, we would like also you to listen to this issue as well. That is the issue of Tibet. That's a very fair thing to do, we went in exile for 60 years. Our relationship have gone through a roller coaster. Sometimes we go down, sometimes go up. From all standards, from all perspectives, today's visit to Dharamsala and meeting officials, including Prime Minister of India, it's a way up as far as Tibetans are concerned. Both Tibetans inside Tibet, 6 million Tibetans who are suffering, and in exile all over the world will celebrate this visit and welcome it with, very grateful heart.
All right, finally, before I let you go, we do know that this becomes a problem and an issue between India and China as well. What's the way forward? How do you see this move forward with China? Do you think that the envoys and the conversations between envoys will restart? Do you envisage a time in the near future where there will be forward movement in resolution, autonomy for Tibet?
One should always remain hopeful. In 20th century, 8 empires collapsed. And many issues, again, positively speaking, okay, have been resolved. Northern Ireland to South Tyrol to there's so many issues being resolved. So we would also like to be one of those issues, either at a macro level or micro level, to be resolved. And we would like to have, dialogue with the Chinese government. And unfortunately, the envoys of His Holiness Dalai Lama visit to and the dialogue ended in 2010. And we've been initiating, and making efforts to have this dialogue, revived. Hopefully, Chinese government will come around and say, yes, this is the time to have dialogue with the envoys of Dalai Lama and resolve the issue of Tibet. That's what we hope. And that's what, I think many Buddhists in China as well, not just Tibetans, are hopeful that Tibet issue will be solved peacefully through dialogue.
You say you're hopeful, but this is Xi Jinping's China. Do you think there is hope under Xi Jinping's China?
When I served for 10 years and Xi Jinping came as vice president, and situation in Tibet became from bad to worse. I never thought it could get worse, but it did, very sadly. And Xi Jinping's father, Xi Zhongxun, was a moderate leader, and knew about Tibet issue very well. In fact, he wrote the obituary of late Panchen Lama, But then the son is not turning out to be like his father, unfortunately, But hopefully, the common sense will prevail, wisdom will prevail, and courage will prevail. And Xi Jinping will say, you know what? This is an easy issue to solve in the sense the partner to deal with is His Holiness the Dalai Lama, respected and loved by people around the world. They see him as a very reasonable person. Now, hopefully, Xi Jinping will see that, like his father did, and address the issue of Tibet. Yes, that way I'm hopeful, but rationally speaking, one should accept the fact that, he's quite nationalist and he has been quite strong-handed both in China as well as in Tibet and Xinjiang, Mongolia, and including in Hong Kong.
Well, leaving with those positive words, Dr. Sangay.
Thank you very much, Geeta ji.
Leaving you with these positive words of hope in these difficult times. Thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Global.
One should always be hopeful.
One should always be hopeful. That's the former president of the CTA, the Tibetan government in exile, speaking exclusively to India Today Global. There is hope, is what the Tibetan people are looking up to, looking towards. But the fact is that right now, it's a diplomatic situation. We're looking at the US delegation in India. They've already met with the Tibetan government in exile. They called on the Dalai Lama. There were conversations there. They're seeking conversation between Beijing and the Tibetan government in exile and His Holiness the Dalai Lama's special envoy. We'll have to wait and see whether China pays heed to the calls of the US as also of the Tibetan people. But the host of this entire meeting is India. And the US delegation ended up meeting with Prime Minister Modi as well. Again, we'll have to wait and see how China reacts to that. They've already reacted to the meeting and the visit, and that certainly has not been kind. On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of a live session from India Today Global Studio. Thank you for watching.